do first, 26 or 6?
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first meeting of the Senate Judiciary Committee. I'd like to ask all the members and guests, as always, please silence your phones. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll.
Here.
Senator Deneen.
Here.
Senator Neal. Senator Nemes.
Present.
Senator Reed.
Here.
Senator Stivers. Senator Thomas.
Here.
Vice Chair Wheeler.
Here.
Chair Storm.
Here. It appears we have a quorum present. We're duly constituted to do business today. Do any members have guests they'd like to introduce? I think Senator Deneen.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a special guest with me and a previous colleague on the Elizabethtown City Council. He has been reelected to the Elizabethtown City Council multiple times. He's a wonderful councilman, does a great job for us down there in Elizabethtown, and I would like everybody to give a warm welcome to Councilman Tony Bishop.
Anyone else? Thank you. Members, just please note that there are a set of rules in your packets. That's the rules that we'll be governing this committee with. And there's also some PowerPoints that may be presented today in your packets as well. So at this time, I'd ask Vice Chair to assume the role.
Ladies and gentlemen, first on the agenda, we have Senate Bill 26, sponsored by Chair Storm. Chair Storm, could you please identify your guest for the record?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Brandon Storm, Senator of the 21st District.
And
my name is Marcus Vanover. I'm a family court judge for Lincoln, Pulaski, and Rockcastle counties, and I serve as the lead for the Dependency, Neglect, and Abuse Work Group for the Kentucky Judicial Commission on Mental Health.
Crystal Adams. I am the chair for the work group for the Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities for the Justice Commission.
Chair Storm, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. Members of the committee, thank you for allowing us to present to you Senate Bill 26. This bill is a bill to protect family rights regarding disabilities. It was the brainchild of the Kentucky Judicial Commission on Mental Health, as well as the Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Work Group. Basically, this ensures that disability alone cannot be the sole reason that an adoption petition is denied or that parental rights are terminated. Section 1, paragraph 8 establishes a precise definition of what disability is. And at this point, I'd like to defer to my colleagues for their presentation.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Storm. Go on to slide 2. So to lay up a little bit of foundation about the Kentucky Judicial Commission on Mental Health, the commission was established by Supreme Court order in 2022. It casts a wide net in representing agencies and court partners in Kentucky with more than 80 appointed members. This includes legislators from both chambers, including Senator Rocky Adams, who is a co-sponsor of this bill. The reach is even larger than that. We have over 400 professionals serving across the Commission's 10 work groups, and each year we collect legislative recommendations for things that we see that may be helpful in dealing with folks with mental health issues through our courts. Those recommendations go through a vigorous review process as we uphold legislative change should be the last resort. The entire Commission must review and agree to the recommendations, and this year, with Senator Storm's help, we have led to Senate Bill 26. Senate Bill 26 came from the Intellectual and Developmental Work Group and was vetted through my Dependency, Neglect, and Abuse Work Group to ensure consensus. I also want to briefly thank Senator Deneen and Senator Elkins for their sponsorship of the bill. Next slide. The need for relief in this matter was highlighted with a case from the Kentucky Supreme Court in 2019, Cabinet and Health and Family Services versus KS. In this case, a mother with cognitive issues and mild autism had lost her parental rights. Through the process, it was noted that more appropriate services were not offered to this parent in light of her disability, which may have constituted a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. In this case, any risk of harm was built entirely upon the assumption that this person with mild cognitive defects could not parent. While the termination was ultimately upheld, the justices were all concerned that with what services were being provided to the mother and whether those were sufficient to protect her constitutional rights. This bill would address those services in consideration of reasonable efforts for termination. Similarly, in another case, TC versus Cabinet, which came out of the Kentucky Court of Appeals, they upheld the termination of parental rights for a mother with low IQ and cognitive limitations. Despite clear evidence that her disability did not diminish her love for her child, did not hinder her cooperation with the Cabinet, or prevent her from completing her case plan, her rights were terminated. It's unclear also what services were offered to her to see if reasonable accommodations could have been made, which offered to allow her to safely parent her child and have the child returned to her care. Personally, I've had multiple cases where the primary factor for the removal stem from developmental disabilities with the parents, and I will say that those cases are very difficult to handle, and we need some guidance to assist us in knowing exactly what we're looking for and what we should consider in these termination type cases. These cases all underscore the need for change in Kentucky to ensure that appropriate services are addressed in all cases and that individuals with disabilities are not wrongfully discriminated against on the sole basis of that disability. Now I'd like to turn it over to Crystal to share with you some research supporting the need for this bill.
Again, my name is Crystal Adams, and I thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 26 to you today. The Health and Human Service Office for Civil Rights and the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division published technical assistance in 2020 for state and local child welfare agencies and courts related to the implementation of the Americans with Disabilities Act, citing reports of, quote, discrimination from individuals with disabilities involved in the welfare system, end quote, across the country. They cited the National Council on Disabilities data from their 2012 Rocking the Cradle report to demonstrate the long-standing and widespread nature of the problem. This report indicated national removal rates where parents have a psychiatric disability as high as 70 to 80%, where the parents have an intellectual disability as high as 40 to 80%, and indicated national removal rates, that families with parents' physical disability reported discriminatory treatment in 13% of cases. The Health and Human Services Office of Civil Rights and the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division found inconsistency in the policy, practices, and procedures of child welfare agencies and courts across the nation inhibits the ability to prevent discrimination against parents and prospective parents as required by the Americans with Disabilities Act. As of January 2025, Kentucky has 8,301 children in out-of-home care with active placements. The state also has a significant population of individuals with disabilities. National data shows approximately 15.8% of Kentuckians reported disability that limits activity, with an estimated 1.25 million adults, 34% of the adult population living with a disability. Passing legislation will assist Kentucky in preventing our significant population of individuals with disability from potential discrimination or harm by creating clear language in the law to protect individuals from discrimination. Senate Bill 26 addresses critical issues faced by parents with disabilities in Kentucky, particularly within the adoption and parental rights termination process. It emphasizes the need for fair treatment and access to supportive services, reflecting Kentucky's commitment to maintaining family integrity and ensuring the best interests of children. About 20 other states have implemented similar legislation, including Indiana in 2021, Ohio in 2023, South Carolina in 2017, and Tennessee in 2021. Its passage would follow the lead of these states to ensure parents with disabilities will not be wrongfully discriminated against. With that, I will turn it back over to Judge Vanover to discuss the bill's key provisions.
There are 5 key provisions included in Senate Bill 26. The first provision preserves family integrity. It would amend KRS 199.11, 199.473, and KRS 625.050. Senate Bill 26 would provide a clear definition of disability and prevent termination of parental rights or denial of adoption petitions solely based upon a parent's disability. This protection helps maintain stable family environments and minimizes unnecessary separations. Children benefit from stable and loving homes, and parents with disabilities are capable of providing such environments. The next provision, the bill ensures supported services. Through amendments to KRS 199.471 and KRS 625.090, this bill would mandate that supportive services and accommodations be considered and provided to parents with disabilities in both adoption proceedings and parental rights termination cases. This ensures that the parents have access to the necessary resources to successfully navigate the legal processes. Next, Senate Bill 26 enhances transparency and accountability. By amending KRS 199.471 and 625.050, the bill would enhance transparency by ensuring that the decision-making process is thoroughly documented and reviewed, confirming that individual assessments was conducted, and that appropriate adaptive services and modifications were considered before any refusal based on disability. It also mandates that the retention of all related documentation be made for 2 years, providing a safeguard to ensure accountability and preventing discrimination in the process. Senate Bill 26 also aligns Kentucky with federal standards. This legislative package would uphold principles consistent with the Americans with Disabilities Act and ensure equitable treatment for individuals with disabilities. Finally, the bill clarifies some language. Senate Bill 26 makes necessary corrections to existing law to ensure accuracy. Specifically, the bill would amend 199.471 and 625.090 to correct language and provide clarity, such as changing pleadings to record and completing unfinished sentences. These adjustments ensure the law better reflects its original intent, supports fair and transparent practices in adoption and parental rights cases involving parents with disabilities. Next slide. Senate Bill 26 represents a crucial step forward in ensuring fairness, transparency, and support for parents with disabilities in Kentucky's legal system. With your support, we can prevent discrimination and ensure that disability alone is never the reason a parent is denied their rights. I want to thank the committee for the time and consideration for this important legislation and the opportunity to appear before you today. We are happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Do we have any questions? If not, yes, Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to say hello to Judge Vanover. I've been in his court several times there in Boyle County and in Lincoln County, and you are an outstanding jurist, Judge Vanover. And I'm pleased to see that you're here joining Senator Storm today and recommending this legislation. I just want to say hello to you again.
Thank you, Senator Thomas. It's always nice to see you.
Motion on the bill.
I believe Senator Carroll had a quick question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And being a parent of an adult child with special needs, and I'm not going to say too much because I'll tear up if I do. So help me to understand. And I know this is the things that this address are things that my wife and I have discussed a lot. I don't know if my daughter would even be physically able to have a child. But if she is, and that were to happen at some point, we always wondered what might be the results of that. What would happen if if something were to happen to my wife and I, and what would happen? Because she, without question, she would need assistance to be successful in raising a child. But she has aspirations to be married and have a family just like any other 25-year-old. So I appreciate you all doing this. In this, does it specify provisions where a new parent with special needs or any of these other categories could request help from the cabinet, or is this more that the cabinet has already intervened? And They're already looking at this situation, but does it have language where, just say for us, if our daughter were to someday get married, have a child, and we felt like she needed help, where we could reach out to the cabinet for certain services that she would get. There are certain services she has through a Michelle P. waiver, but nothing that would really be specific to raising a child. Although I guess some with her plan of care could be altered to include those goals about raising a child, but nothing more specific. Are there any states that get into any more detail than what this bill does, as far as just a proactive where services can be requested and not after there's been some complaint or the cabinet's looking at the situation, but just right off the bat? And I hope that makes sense.
Thank you for the question. It does make sense. My understanding of the way the bill would work is regarding termination of parental rights proceedings in that situation, and I think in that case that you explained would be somewhat different. So this is proactive steps you're trying to take, as opposed to this bill would address situations where the cabinet was already involved. Is my understanding correct, Judge?
And I believe that's the case, Senator. So this, again, is tailored for adoptive and termination of parental rights cases, and looking at that, because those are the most serious at this point, because those are kind of the end of rights.
With that being said, I wonder if there is a need to maybe go a step further and require the cabinet to put programs in place or packages in place of services for those with special needs who have babies.
Senator Carroll, with all respect, I guess we got two more bills, but I get your point. I think that is for a worthy cause, though. We have a motion from Senator Deneen. Do we have a second? I'll second. Second from Senator Thomas. Madam Clerk, could you please, or Mr. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Senator Carroll.
Aye.
Senator Deneen.
Aye.
Senator Neal. Senator Nemes.
Aye.
Senator Reed.
Aye.
Senator Stivers. Senator Thomas.
Aye.
Vice Chair Wheeler.
Aye.
Chair Storm.
Aye.
All right, we have a unanimous vote, 7-0. The bill will pass with favorable expression and move to the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Committee.
Oh, sponsor, do you want it on consent?
If it pleases the chair.
All right, do I have a motion for consent?
We
Motion.
normally don't do that this early in the session unless you all heard otherwise.
He's the chair. Okay.
Well, I have
Senator Carroll is right. We really don't do
Okay. Well,
That's
we
fine.
we will. Okay. Well, since we will not entertain a consent motion at this time, thank you very.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Storm, if you want to stay seated, we'll move on very quickly to Senate Bill 64, since I think it's one we can dispose of rather quickly. If you could please identify yourself for the record, and I think the person seated with you is well known to most members of this committee, but if you would like to reintroduce yourselves and proceed.
Thank you. Brandon Storm, Senator of the 21st District.
Dalton Workman, Director of State Government Affairs for Charter Communications.
And I'm Holly Spade with External Affairs for AT&T.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is a very strategic bill, and what it does, it just protects key asset or key infrastructure assets. In Section 1, it defines what is covered, and we wanted to include telephone lines, broadband services, and it also is clear that this is a Class D felony, criminal mischief in the first degree for anyone who damages, possesses, or tampers with the operation of key infrastructure assets that render that asset inoperable in whole or in part, or renders the operation of the asset harmful or dangerous. And I'd like my guests to explain why this is so necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Spectrum, as many people are familiar, is the service that Charter Communication provides. We have nearly 800,000 customers across the state of Kentucky, and a growing challenge that we face, and I know our partners at AT&T are facing, is damage to our infrastructure and our plant due to an increase in copper theft. Spectrum, our services are not copper-based, but a lot of times we are seeing in incidents around the state that these bad actors are cutting fiber in a lot of instances in search of copper plant and facilities. In 2024 alone, we had over 20 incidents of theft and vandalism to our facilities across Kentucky that resulted in over 30,000 of our customers across the state impacted in various different ways. So it's a growing concern that we're seeing and we're facing. It's requiring us to pull a lot of our resources out of the field, to remove them from projects that are expanding broadband. That's a priority of this General Assembly, and to focus on fixing these issues where we're seeing vandalism. As Senator Storm stated, Senate Bill 64 would simply allow telecommunication services to be included in that definition of key infrastructure assets, and would make it a felony if someone tampers with, damages, or make inoperable these services. I know through Charter and all of our colleagues within the industry, we provide service beyond residential customers to 911 centers, to hospitals, to healthcare providers. So this isn't just a residential issue. This is a growing concern that could impact some of our emergency personnel as well. And
I have a motion on the bill. Do I have a second?
I second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do I have a motion to adopt the sub?
Second.
What do I have a motion? Okay, motion to second to adopt the sub. That's a voice vote, right? All right. Do I? All those in favor of adopting the sub, say aye. Aye. Okay, the sub is now before the committee. Mr. Clerk, we have a motion and a second. Could you please call the roll? Oh, we did. I think Mike knew. Okay, motion on the sub, or motion on the bill as amended by the committee sub. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Reed. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll,
Aye.
Senator Deneen,
Aye.
Senator Neal, Senator Nemus,
Aye.
Senator Reed,
Aye.
Senator Stivers, Senator Thomas, Vice Chair Wheeler,
Aye.
Chair Storm.
Aye.
Bill passes with favorable expression 7-0 and shall move to the floor.
All right, is Senator Rocky Adams here in the room? I see her. Next on the agenda, or last on our agenda, is Senate Bill 73, an act relating to sexual extortion, sponsored by Senator Julie Rocky Adams. If you could please identify yourself and your guests, and then you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Julie Rocky Adams, State Senate District 36, and with me today are
Attorney Sarah Collins from Louisville, originally from Pikeville.
Greetings, I'm Lady T. Thompson. I'm a human trafficking expert for the country.
You ready for us? Okay.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, Senate Bill 73, which is in front of you all today, in summary, will strengthen laws by making sexual extortion a felony. It will empower the victim by giving them clear legal remedies to seek justice and recover damages. And it prioritizes prevention by creating opportunities for educating our schools and communities on sexual extortion. Sexual extortion is one of the most dangerous and rapidly growing crimes targeting young people today. It is calculated, it is cruel, and it thrives on fear and silence. Too many kids today are being manipulated into situations that they don't know how to escape from, and too many families are left devastated, wondering how this happened to them. So what is sexual extortion? Sextortion is a form of exploitation that occurs when a person obtains sexually explicit images of an individual and threatens to release them unless their demands, which can be either monetary or sexual or any other requests, are met. Perpetrators often use social media platforms, online gaming sites, and messaging apps to target youth, posing as peers or romantic interests to coerce victims into sharing explicit context. Perpetrators can also use AI-generated images to exploit their victims. Perpetrators then use threats of exposure to coerce these victims into providing additional explicit content or money, leaving many children feeling ashamed and too afraid to seek help. So why is this bill important? This bill is important because kids have these in their hands at an extraordinarily young age. They are all potential victims. Over 50% of minors view online grooming as a common experience among their peers. And just between October 2021 and March 2023, over 13,000 cases of online financial extortion targeting minors were reported. And there was new data that was released that I just got a copy of. The latest numbers are 26,718 reports. And the FBI has classified this as the fastest growing crime against children. So we are here today to discuss the bill, and I don't know if my Section 1, really quickly, it establishes the crime of sexual extortion as a felony. We have Section 2, which establishes that victims or their representatives can sue offenders, which is establishing a civil cause of action. Section 3 includes sexual extortion in the definition of sex crime under Kentucky law. Section 4 requires superintendents or local school boards to require the principals of each school to notify students and do an education campaign. And Section 5 requires elementary, public, and secondary schools, as well as post-secondary schools, resources for financial so that they can contact a hotline, a suicide hotline, or law enforcement. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Greetings, senators and distinguished legislators.
Please turn on your microphone.
Thank you. Greetings, senators and distinguished legislators, community actors and advocates. Today I come before you not merely with words as a mother, grandmother, human trafficking fellow, human rights advocate, a gender and youth development expert working on national frameworks for the Office of Trafficking in Persons, but I'm here with an appeal, a plea on behalf of our children, our communities, our humanity. The crisis of sextortion and sextortion-based trafficking is not a shadow lingering in some distant land. It is here, it is real, and it's devouring the innocence of our youth. Sextortion-based trafficking occurs as a gateway to human trafficking when an individual is coerced into providing explicit images, videos, or acts under threats of exposure, harm, or blackmail, or something else that a party benefits from in the form of money, drugs, or something of value. Often beginning online, it's a trap that victims stay in a cycle of fear, forcing compliance and enabling traffickers to escalate control, leading into in-person exploitation and trafficking. These forms of exploitation are insidious. It begins with a seamlessly harmless interaction, a DM, a direct message from a stranger, a friend request, a compliment in a moment of vulnerability. But behind the scene is a predator, patient and calculating, ready to shatter a life. With one explicit photo or video, the trap is set. The victim, often a youth, is plunged into a nightmare of fear, coercion, or despair. This is not a theoretical issue. This is happening to our sons and daughters, our nieces and nephews, our grandchildren, and to the youth of Kentucky and across the nation. I've been working on this for 24 months. So I ask you to consider this. The FBI has reported that this issue has had a 1/5 1,000% increase in sextortion cases involving minors over the past 5 years. These aren't just numbers, these are children. Polaris reported in 2023, nearly 88% of trafficking recruitment happens online, on the very platforms they use to connect with friends and express themselves. Here in Kentucky, with one of the largest rates of missing children per capita per the National Human Trafficking Hotline report in 2023, it makes Kentucky fertile ground for predators who weaponize shame and isolation. Think about that. Think about the pain of a child trapped in a cycle that they cannot escape. Think about the parents who will never get the chance to hold their children again because the shame was just too much to bear. Think about the suicide notes left behind by children who felt that there was no other way out. This crisis is not just devastating, it is preventable. And yet, we are not moving fast enough. We are allowing the predators to outpace our protections. Please deploy legislative action on sextortion as a felony with increased penalties when minors are involved. Why should Kentucky lead the way? I have 3 keys that I'd like to share. Kentucky cannot afford to wait. The cost of inaction is too high. The cost is measured in stolen futures and shattered lives. Number 1, prevention is key. Kentucky ranks 5th in the nation for child poverty and the economically vulnerable, which are 4 times more likely to be targeted by traffickers and sextortionists. Poverty creates devastation, and devastation makes easy prey. By embedding digital literacy education programs for both youth, parents, or caregivers, and creating community safety nets, we can teach our children to recognize and escape these online traps. Number 2, protection is another key. Our laws are outdated, inadequate, and for the realities of sextortion and sextortion-based trafficking, Kentucky must pass comprehensive legislation that criminalizes sextortion explicitly, recognizing it for the form of criminality that it is. We must update statutes, provide law enforcement with advanced investigation tools, and deliver survivors with trauma-informed support services so that they are not left to navigate the aftermath alone. Third, protection is a pivotal key. The U.S. Department of Justice reported in 2023 less than 5% of sextortion-related cases led to federal convictions. The predators know this. They exploit it. We need better tools for law enforcement, enhanced cybercrime units, and dedicated prosecutors who specialize in these cases. Kentucky can set a national standard, showing predators that this is where the power ends. Every moment we delay, another child is pulled into the abyss. Every moment we hesitate, another family is broken beyond repair. What's the cost of doing nothing? If we don't act, what will we say to the mother whose child is no longer here because they couldn't bear the shame of this type of exploitation? What will we tell the father who discovers too late that his daughter's cry for help was silenced by fear? What will we tell ourselves as we look in the mirror, knowing we had the power to stop it and we chose not to? This isn't just about legislation or partisanship or policy. It's about humanity. Our children are not collateral damage. They are not bargaining chips in the future, and we are failing them against digital exploitations and online harms. We need legislative action on sextortion as a felony with increased penalties when minors are involved. Take a stand for justice and protect the citizens of Kentucky, and support Senate Bill 73 by Senator Julie Adams. Thank you.
Good morning. It is an honor to be before this committee, and it is an honor to stand before you on behalf of my client, who has come to be known only as Jane Doe. Jane Doe's story explains the problem, and even though she cannot be identified, her story makes a lasting impression and shows how vital the passage of this bill is. It further shows no one is exempt from being a victim, and predators are very difficult to identify. In 2020, Louisville Metro Police Detective Brian Wilson sexually extorted at least 25 women. From my understanding, most of his victims were in Kentucky, around the Lexington and Louisville areas. Brian Wilson is a very dangerous predator. For his crimes against women, he spent a little over a year in federal prison. He is not a registered sex offender. He has internet access. And my client, who is one of his victims, phoned me a few months ago to tell me she ran into him in Kroger. These people are among us, and like so many predators, it is not what you would think. While sextortion is a tremendous issue with teens and young adults, I think it's important to remember, especially with AI-generated images, that every person is vulnerable. As long as you have something to lose, you become vulnerable. And with all due respect, everyone on this committee is inherently vulnerable to this because of your positions. This is a changing and evolving crime, and it's important to understand what it is and understand that it can be stopped. My client had images stolen from Snapchat, images she had never shared. She is a public high school teacher, and it would have been devastating to her, for her career and her life, had those images gotten out. As soon as the images were stolen, she was inundated with vile, disgusting messages calling her names and demanding more nude images. She immediately called LMPD. 2 officers came out, and they didn't know how to help her. They told her to call the sex crimes unit, and she tried. She left over 10 voicemail messages, and no one called her back. She was alone and afraid and desperate and could not get help. She eventually became suicidal. For weeks and months, these messages continued. She begged him to stop, to go to someone else. Just leave me alone. I'm not that kind of person. I won't send you these. I have a boyfriend. I don't do that. Nothing stopped him. Until one day the messages just disappeared. She would find out months and months later he had been arrested. And she was discovered when the FBI contacted her and informed her that her information had been found in another investigation. 25 women were sexually extorted. It's my understanding many of them had occurred the same way, and very few had any idea how to get help. It is a very overwhelming situation, and it's easy to understand how you think the world is over. We tell kids, don't sext because you can't get those images back. We tell them that constantly. What happens when the worst happens? I can tell you, your colleagues in South Carolina recently discovered this when a lawmaker's son committed suicide. And through the investigation of his death, they found images. The good news is when the worst happens, it's not the end of the world. Things can be done. Images can be removed by the FBI. We are becoming more and more advanced in how to handle this. But we have a multifold problem because law enforcement, especially local law enforcement, is not equipped to handle it, doesn't know how to handle it, needs more training, and needs to understand where to send this information. We have to create awareness with children of what this is and what to do. But we must, more than any other reason, Senate Bill 73 must pass because we do not have criminal law or civil law, federally or in this state, that adequately addresses this. Currently, sextortion is prosecuted both civilly and criminally under a patchwork of laws that really do not address the problem. Brian Wilson was federally charged with cyberstalking. What he did was so much more than cyberstalking. When we sued him for the crimes he committed against my client, we sued for invasion of privacy, dissemination of materials in violation of the Stored Communications Act, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The law doesn't address what this is. We cannot adequately treat this problem. We cannot maximize our power and protect the citizens of the Commonwealth until we call a spade and address what this is. It is a sex crime, and we must call it what it is, treat it appropriately in order to hold predators accountable and in order to protect and help victims. Thank you.
I think we have a question from Senator Deneen.
Mr. Chairman, not a question, just a statement. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming today. I would like to extend my thanks to Senator Rocky Adams. Your work in this space over the years as a champion for those dealing with sexual assault and abuse, and now sextortion, is commendable. I have participated with you, alongside you, in these efforts. I thank you for the bill, and I look forward to supporting it on the floor to help protect these victims. And we see this as a former principal. I see this rampantly throughout our school systems, and I appreciate the efforts to curtail this. So thank you, and I look forward to supporting the bill on the floor.
Thank you.
Senator Wheeler.
Thank you. And Senator Adams, I want to say again, I appreciate you continuing your long line of passing legislation to protect our state's children.
Thank
and you bring good company with you here today from back home. Yes, I agree with most of what's in this bill. I think it is important that we specify this down, especially with the effervescence of cell phones in and around our schools, even at young ages. And, obviously, I did a lot of dumb stuff when I was in high school, and so did a lot of other people. Yeah. And unfortunately, with the availability of these devices, the memories of those things can last a lot longer amongst a lot larger group of people than what they could in the past. I guess one question I had, and I think Sarah Beth answered it somewhat, I mean, from the point of a civil action, I mean, I can think as a lawyer of about 50 million different things I would put in a complaint if somebody did that. And I believe, extortion in and of itself is both a criminal and a civil offense. One concern I had, at least as far as the suicide within 90 days of the commission of the offense, would this, I guess, be based upon the last test or text, or how are you all judging the statute on that?
Yes, and one of the things, and thank you for that. That's that's an important distinction. I did speak with Scott West, who is with the DPA, about that. That was one of the concerns that he had. And in full disclosure, he had some ideas on how maybe we could clarify that so that we didn't have any unintended consequences. And so I told him I was open to a floor amendment on maybe clarifying that language so that we did not have any unintended consequences. So directly to your point, I'd love to work with you on that.
And just a brief follow-up, I guess you're making it a Class A felony under subsection 4 for a victim under 12, which could even include the death penalty in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I personally have no problem with that for somebody that would do this to a child, but I mean, I did not. Scott might. I don't know what. I guess, are you aware of that provision and some of the consequences that would have?
Yeah, so I think that should be kind of part of the conversation as we go forward in clarifying what that is.
All right. Thank you.
And that's the great thing about the committee process is, we get these items out and we make a better bill as a result. So thank you for that.
Senator Nemes.
Yes, I want to thank you for coming here today. It's very important. Years ago, back when Senator Adams and I were in the House, 15 years ago, whatever.
No,
we
it's
talked
not that
about,
long ago, right?
Okay, it was yesterday. Yes. We were talking about human trafficking, and everybody in Kentucky looked at us like we were crazy. Even my wife says, well, slavery, because that's what that is, does not happen in Kentucky. I said, yes, it does. It's just nobody knows about it. Yeah. So we were doing, and child abuse was rampant and still is. I'm glad to see you have one from one of my bills here that someone that occupies a position of special trust.
Yes.
Because that's very important. Because back with the child abuse, there was grandparents and people that coaches and this and that were getting away with it because there was no statute that addressed that. So I'm glad you copied that off of my bill back then.
You're very smart.
This is a new thing that's going on, and it's like Senator Wheeler was saying, it's a terrible thing that how they are ahead of times on how to do these dastardly things. Mm-hmm. So to bring this forward, I sure appreciate it. The one thing, does this address minors on minors? Because we've had this in Louisville, where they took the girls in high school, their pictures, and then they did AI and made, and
it would, but that would be a juvenile issue.
It would, I would think so, yeah. My legal counsel says that yes, it does. It would include minors on minors.
Okay, is it in the bill, or it just does because of law that exists now?
I believe that it does just because of existing law.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Senator Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for presenting this bill. I agree with Senator Nemes. It is extremely important. As a father of 6, ages, I've got college students down to the first grade. And, I can really relate, and I appreciate the gravity of this bill. That being said, one thing that I'd like to ask, given the sensitive and potentially disturbing nature of sexual extortion, how can we ensure that the content of these required signs is appropriate for the viewing of young children in elementary schools? Is there a way to make the information accessible? Is it a way to make it age appropriate?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question because what you post in an elementary school may be wildly different than what you post in a high school to get someone's attention as to what this is and what could happen to them. The bill doesn't explicitly say age appropriate, but I think that is a great add to just clarify that. They do say about contacting parents, and parents can get this about what it is, what this means, so that they're kind of aware of their child. But we have to be really careful when we post things in schools and making sure that they're age appropriate. So I think that's a good adding in that age appropriate, or having some sort of another set of eyes to make sure that what is posted is appropriate.
Thank you.
I have just one follow-up. Regarding amendments, you're open to the committee process and potential amendments on this.
Yes.
And you would agree with me that, someone who may threaten action but never carries out action, that would be viewed differently than someone who actually carried out the action, correct?
100%, yes.
And so you would be agreeable to some sort of amendment potentially regarding clarification of that matter as well, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And then last thing, I just wanted to point out for the record that Scott West used to be with DPA. He's now retired, and he works for KACDL.
There we
I just wanted
go.
to clarify the record for that.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, and I will defer to your expertise on a lot of these things, so I look forward to working with you on a floor amendment or two to make sure that this is a really great bill. I mean, it is time to protect our kids. The perpetrators move faster than our laws do, and so I just think it's I'm excited to make this bill even stronger and better and without any unintended consequences.
Thank you, Senator. We have a motion on the bill.
Motion on the bill.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Senator Carroll.
Aye.
Senator Deneen. Aye. Senator Neal. Senator Nemus.
Aye.
Senator Reed.
Aye.
Senator Stivers. Senator Thomas.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to briefly explain my aye vote.
Please proceed.
Senator Adams, this is a good bill, and you and your witnesses today are absolutely correct that sexual exploitation, sexual trafficking is very real and alive. And I have granddaughters who are 15 and 11, and obviously I want to do everything I can to protect them. I think the bill is written is sufficiently tight. The questions that have been raised are good. I just want to briefly touch on Senator Reed's question because that's the only one that gave me pause. I noticed in the legislation you said this would be distributed to fourth graders and above, and I just had a concern whether that fourth graders get information, would that be age appropriate? That's my only concern. I think that's probably going to be something that's worthy of further debate. But other than that concern, it's a good bill. I'm glad to vote for it. We need to have it here in Kentucky. So thank you. I vote aye.
Vice Chair Wheeler.
Aye.
Chair Storm.
Aye. Senate Bill 73 is reported favorably with the expression of opinion the same should pass. Congratulations.
Thank you. I really appreciate you all.
Thank you. Before we conclude the committee, I'd just like to welcome the new members, Senator Reed, Senator Nemus, and Senator Thomas, to the committee. And with that, we'll stand adjourned.